My respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our condolences to you all and to our beloved Imam of our time, Al-Hujjat al-Mahdi, and to all mu'mineen and mu'minat on the occasion of the death anniversary of Lady Zaynab bint Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhim as-salam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the honor of Lady Zaynab, by the honor of her martyrdom or death anniversary, to hasten the glorious reappearance of our Imam and to grant shifa to all those who are ill, and to grant the hajat, fulfillment of hajat for all those who are in need. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the tawfiq to remain firm on the path of the Ahlul Bayt, the path of Muhammad and his progeny. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم أنطقني بالهدى وألهمني التقوى ووفقني للتي هي أزكى اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم وافتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله صلى الله عليك وعلى جدك المصطفى وعلى أبيك المرتضى وعلى أمك الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء وعلى أخيك الحسن المجتبى وعلى أبنائك النجباء وعلى أختك زينب الحوراء وعلى جميع الشهداء السعداء يا أبا عبد الله يا أبا عبد الله عليك مني عليك منا جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقينا وبقي الليل والنهار. All together with our hearts, Assalamu ala al-Husayn wa ala Ali ibn al-Husayn wa ala أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى بالفضل العباس وعلى الحوراء زينب وعلى مسلم بن عقيل وعلى أم البنين وسائر الشهداء جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات. قال الله الحكيم في كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى. And do not let the hatred of a people cause you to deviate from justice. Be just, that is closer to piety. This noble verse 8 of chapter 5 highlights and addresses one of the serious illnesses that many people, unfortunately, are inflicted with in their interpersonal relationships, especially when there are differences or when there is conflict. The holy verse provides a general rule, general guidance that says, whenever there are issues and conflicts, whenever you feel that others have rancor towards you, despise, or you have it towards others, do not let that deviate you or divert you from dealing with them justly, whether they are a friend or an enemy, whether they are close or far, whether they are someone you truly love or otherwise, you always want to treat them with justice. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا. Do not allow these emotions to drive you away from justice. اعدلوا, it's a command. Be just. هو أقرب للتقوى. Your piety is not necessarily determined just by your daily observances of salah. You need to observe justice in your interpersonal relationships when dealing with others. No matter how close or far they are, you need to deal with them with justice. In this lecture, inshallah, what I will be doing is I will be exploring 3 reoccurring patterns that usually take place when people have conflicts or when the emotions are not in their best of nature or best of self. When a person's emotions are not under control, whether it is, again, love, whether it is hate, whether it is other emotions, anger, pleasure, when the emotions are not in check and a person is dealing with others, usually one of these 3 patterns take place. And these 3 patterns are a clear violation of justice in dealing with one another. What are these 3 patterns? Inshallah, I will highlight that right after salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The first of these patterns is judging others by double standards. Judging others by double standards. Always there are 2 standards. One standard for those who I love and I have a bias towards, and another standard for those who I don't like. It's the same issue, it's the same problem, but I always give it 2 different judgments. I don't focus on the issue at hand, I focus on who that issue is related to. My very close friend who I truly care about and love was speaking harshly to someone. What's my judgment? He's been having a very bad day. He's really not like that. I'm sure you said something to provoke him, but he's really not like that. But another person in that same situation who is not my friend, my judgment is automatically what? What a rude person. So rude, disrespectful. The same exact scene, the same exact situation. One has been having a tough day, he's been challenged with other things, and somebody provoked him. And this one, automatically they are rude. You see these 2 standards? Without any context. The only reason the shift happened from the first standard to the second is my relationship with that person. Because I like this person, and that other person I don't necessarily like, not necessarily hate, but I may not just like that person. I'm not fond of that person. Another example would be, for instance, I have a child who misbehaves, and my judgment on that child, my child, when they misbehave, is that they've just, been on a sugar rush today, and they're hyper, and, they've been having a bad day. But if that's somebody else's child doing the same mischief, usually my response is, his parents didn't know how to raise him. His child is just not brought up right. You see the shift? My daughter is married and she fails to adhere to her marital responsibilities towards her husband. And I come to make a judgment and say that my daughter has so much on her plate, he needs to be patient. He has a lot of demands. She is not doing anything wrong. She just needs a break. She needs space. But as soon as it's flipped, my son-in-law is the one who's not catering to his wife's marital rights. He's negligent. I don't know where we found him. I don't know what she likes about him. I don't understand why she married him from the first place. I wish she divorces him. And. Why? Double standards. This is my daughter. This is my son-in-law. Vice versa. My son, all the women love to marry my son. He's the best. But other people's daughters, my daughter-in-law, for example, same thing. She's the worst daughter-in-law. She has all kinds of issues. Even though, again, the behavior that may be made by the husband or wife, the son or daughter, son-in-law or daughter-in-law, is the same. But my judgment depends on my emotions and not justice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? اِعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. If your son or daughter is wrong, then admit that they are wrong. And be on the side of the other party who is right or who is wronged. Oftentimes people feel that, well, this is my child, this is my friend, this is my relative. And this was a very jahili mindset, where I stand with my brother against my cousin, and I stand with my cousin against a stranger. Right, wrong, it doesn't matter. Even if they're wrong, I will stand with them, because it is me and my brother against my cousin, and me and my cousin against the stranger. That's a jahili mindset. Allah has condemned this. اِعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. So the first pattern is what? Is judging by double standards. Your standard as a mu'min needs to be one. Haqq is haqq and batil is batil. It doesn't change because the person involved in the issue is related to you or beloved by you or otherwise. The second pattern is what we can refer to, and before I go to the second pattern, allow me to present a hadith that is attributed to the beloved Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, the commander of the faithful, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. And this is reported in Ghurr al-Hakam by Al-Amudi al-Tamimi. He says, أنصف الناس من نفسك وأهلك وخاصتك ومن لك فيه هوى. He says, observe justice with people, starting from yourself, meaning if you're in a conflict with someone, you need to begin by ensuring that you're treating that person with justice, even if it is going against your own self. Not just yourself, وَأَهْلِكَ, and your family, your wife, your children, your loved ones, وَخَاصَّتِكَ, and those who are very close and dear and near to you, وَمَنْ لَكَ فِيهِ هَوَى, and those who you feel love for, you feel bias towards. It says, make sure that you do not allow these familial relationships to do what? To divert you from treating with justice. وَأَعْدِلْ فِي الْعَدُوِّ وَالصَّدِيقِ, and uphold justice equally with the enemy and the friend. And pay attention here, the Imam mentions the enemy before the friend. Perhaps to emphasize this point, that our treatment of justice should not be based on our mere emotions, but rather based on haqq. The second pattern, my dears, is being eager to claim one's own rights while remaining negligent towards the rights of others. There are people who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has condemned in the Holy Quran. They used to do that in their business transactions. when they sell, for example, grains, they would give less. They would, for example, sell you a kilo of grains. They would give you less than a kilo in actuality, but charge you for a kilo. Allah calls them what? مطففون. ويل للمطففين الذين إذا اكتالوا على الناس يستوفون وإذا كالوهم أو وزنوهم يخسرون. Woe to those who give less than due. Those who, when they take a measure from people, take it in full. But when they give by measure or weight, they cause loss. In our interpersonal relationships, sometimes we act as if we are mutaffifin. You lend someone money, you're very eager on making sure they pay you back on the time agreed upon. But when someone else lends you money, and please excuse me for using you, I mean the example, the person who's not here, inshallah, right? When that person is being lent money by other people, that eagerness goes away. They don't care. You have to beg them to get your money back from them. When you want work done, for instance, in your home, in your business, you want the person who's doing work to do what? To do the best. Not to fall short in anything. And you have this very, precision in everything they do. This is right, this is wrong, this needs to be here, this needs to be there. But as soon as you are hired to do something for someone else, very negligent in how you conduct the business. This is a level of tatfif. This is a level of injustice, a pattern of injustice. And many other examples. For instance, I have an expectation that when someone makes a promise to me, they need to fulfill that promise. But I find it easy to make all kinds of promises and just break them. That is injustice. That is not fairness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to understand that fairness, justice is not something that is only limited to those with authority. Me and you have to exercise justice and fairness in all of our dealings in relationships. Why is it that we have a code of law, a very detailed code of law, which is known as Sharia? What is the point of Sharia? What does Sharia do? If I were to ask this question, what is the point of Sharia? What is the main objective of Sharia? The main objective of Sharia is to ensure and maintain justice in 4 main relationships. It's to ensure justice in 4 main relationships. We have 4 relationships in life. The first is that which is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are rights that Allah has upon us. By observing these rights, then we have maintained adala with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second relationship is our relationship with ourselves. The self has rights upon us. The third relationship is our relationship with other people. And the fourth relationship is relationship with the environment. Even the environment. You say, really? Does Sharia consider the environment in its legislations? Yes. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Kulu washrabu wa la tusrifu. Eat and drink and do not be extravagant. Do not harm nature and the environment. You can't just go and burn trees or cut trees and throw them to the side. That's not permissible. You can't go against the as we call it, الثروة الحيوانية, that the assets of having animals and cattle and just, for example, getting rid of them. Because all these losses are tampering with the environment. Any pollution that we may cause that can hurt the well-being of the earth, which eventually comes down to what? Hurting the people, the dwellers of the earth, is also not permissible. In fact, as far as this, when there's a war between Muslims and non-Muslims in the ahkam of war, during the time of Rasulullah, one of the wajibat that he mentions, the instructions and the commandments that he gives to the heads of the army is do not cut a tree. Where? In the land of the enemy. Do not, destroy their natural infrastructure. Do not do that. Do not poison their water. Do not do anything that can harm their environment. Because the environment, the earth, has a right upon us as well. So the four major relationships are governed with justice. And that's why we have laws. And that's why we have something called Risalat al-Huquq, the treatise of rights by our beloved fourth Imam, Zaynul Abidin wa Sayyid al-Sajidin li dhikrihi salawat. To ensure justice. But when we understand justice within a very limited scope, whenever someone has authority, they need to treat those who are under their authority with justice. And that is all that we know about justice, and that's it. No, Islam says justice goes all the way to how you deal with the earth, the environment, and everything around you. In fact, our Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, when he defines the quality of justice, he says, Al-adlu wad'u shay'i fi mawdi'ih, is placing everything where it belongs. Every time I misplace something, I have violated adl. This is a very broad and deep understanding of adl. We believe that adala is the quality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the case of Allah, it means that He perfects all of His actions and He does not misplace anything. Everything He does is right and is in the most perfect form. So this is the second pattern. The third pattern of injustice in our interpersonal relationships is being attentive to the faults of others while being blind to our own faults. That's a pattern that is also prevalent in society. I can easily detect faults in others. I can pay attention to their tone, their words, their behaviors, their actions, their shortcomings, their downfalls. All of that I can see clearly and write a journal about it and write a book about it. Very clear to me, clear as day. But I can't even write 2 sentences about my own faults. I'm blind to my faults. That is also an injustice that we commit in our interrelationships with others. Why is it that in a relationship, let's say in a family, as a spouse, I only see the mistakes of my spouse? Never do I check my mistakes. Maybe I have the same mistakes, if not more, but it's always the other person. Whenever there's a problem in a relationship, the first statement that many people make is, it's the other person. She's the problem, or he's the problem. Rarely do you see someone say, you know what, we have a problem because I am the problem, because I need to work on myself, because I have issues. That is rare. There are, not saying there's no one that admits, there are, but it's very rare. It's usually the other person. Even if the other person meant the whole world's wrong. But I can never see that fault within myself. Our beloved Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, as reported by Shaykh al-Kulayni al-Kafi, he says, كَفَى بِالْمَرْءِ عَيْبًا أَنْ يُبْصِرَ مِنَ النَّاسِ مَا يَعْمَى عَنْهُ مِنْ نَفْسِهِ. He says it's sufficient as a aib, as a flaw, for a person that he sees in others what he is blind to in himself. He says that in of itself is a aib, that I see only the ayub in others, the same ayub that exist in me, but I don't see them in me, I only see them in others. And then he says, أَوْ يُعَيِّرَ النَّاسَ بِمَا لَا يَسْتَطِيعُ تَرْكَهُ, or that he shames people for what he himself is unable to abandon. He talks about others when they lie. They're liars, they're misers, they're this, they're that. He knows the same qualities exist within him. He reprimands them. He speaks ill of them. He may confront them and say to them that you are this and you are that. And he may create a problem with them because of these qualities. And he asks them to stop engaging in these qualities or to abstain from these things and abandon them. Yet, these same qualities or same behaviors, he is almost addicted to. If you're not able to end it yourself, then why demand it from others? Or why demand others to abstain from it or refrain from it? That is also a form of injustice when it comes to our interpersonal relationships. Violating justice in our relationships is not less than the violation of justice in terms of leadership or in terms of government or in terms of rulership. All of it is injustice. Whether it is the Fir'aun, a pharaoh, engaging in injustice towards the people of Bani Israel, or it is a father in his own home, an employer in their own business or company. It is all injustice. And that is one quality, which is the quality of injustice, that Islam has stood against firmly, no compromise. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran, in many verses, He condemns al-zalimeen. And He clearly invokes la'an on al-zalimeen. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ. Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they stood firmly against dhulm. And they didn't just stand against dhulm just by giving sermons. No, they had to pay the price. Their blood was given as a sacrifice in order to uphold justice, in order to preserve the value of justice in society. Karbala is a clear example. What Imam Hussein alayhi salam has given and sacrificed in order to ensure justice, to preserve justice, is obvious. And what his sister Zaynab, who we commemorate tonight, had to endure during Karbala and after Karbala was in the name of Islam and in the name of justice. In fact, when she stood in Sham, she stood in front of Yazid and she says, أَمِنَ الْعَدْلِ يَبْنَ الطُّلَقَاءِ. أَمِنَ الْعَدْلِ يَبْنَ الطُّلَقَاءِ. The first thing she says, is it just, O you son of the Tulaqa? Tulaqa are those that Rasulullah set free on the day of Fath Mecca. She's reminding him of his origin. Had he been truly a mu'min, Sayyidah Zaynab would not use that against him. But because she knows and believes that they remained hypocrites until the last day, she says, يَبْنَ الطُّلَقَاءِ. When a person embraces Islam, they're no longer called anything negative that they had before Islam. Taliq had a negative connotation, one who is set free, not one who has embraced Islam, which tells you that Muawiyah, Abu Sufyan and that family, they did not enter Islam genuinely, because if they did, we have a rule that says al-Islam yajibu ma qabla. Islam erases everything that is before it. Everything they have done before Islam is erased, and now they have a new page and they are pure in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Sayyidah Zaynab reprimands him. She says, يَبْنَ الطُّلَقَاءِ أَمِنَ الْعَدْلِ يَبْنَ الطُّلَقَاءِ. Is this fair, O son of the Tulaqa, that you protect your women, safeguard your women, and keep them covered, while you allow the women of Rasulullah, the children, the women of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, to be exposed in public and everyone sees their faces? Is that fair, Yabna Tulaqa? As if she's saying that justice is key. And the reason why they stood against Yazid is not just because of his moral corruption or religious corruption in that sense, but also because of his violation of justice on all levels. Sayyidatuna Zaynab alayhi salam endured so much in Sham and went back to Medina. Opinions of ulama and muhaqqiqeen differ on whether Sayyidah Zaynab died in Medina. Al-Allama Al-Muhsin Al-Amin, Radwanullahi ta'ala alayh, one of the scholars and muhaqqiqeen, is of the opinion that she remained in Medina and was buried in Baqiyah. But then you have other ulama, and the prominent view is that she was buried where? In Sham. And some say that one of the possible reasons is that Yazid had enforced her exile from Medina. He was fearful that she would create an uprising in Medina by being so vocal about the injustice of Yazid, such that he ordered her husband to take her to a farm that he owned outside the city of Sham. The city where Sayyidah Zaynab is buried, Sayyidah Zaynab is buried in, is not really Sham, it's outside of Sham. It's outside of Sham. It's like a suburb of Sham. Another opinion says that she was exiled to Egypt and she died there and was buried there. But in any case, As-Sayyidah Zaynab alayhi salam is present in the hearts of her lovers, of all mu'mineen and mu'minat. Sayyidatuna Zaynab alayhi salam, in her last moments, whether she was in Egypt, Sham, or Medina, I can imagine that in her last moments she must have recalled the images of Karbala before her passing. What would she remember in Karbala? She would remember, for example, how she had to hand Abdullah, the infant, to her brother Al-Hussein. Akhi Hussein, take your infant. He hasn't had anything. His mother has not had anything. She cannot feed him. There's no milk. Take him and get him water. This memory is stuck in the mind of Sayyidatuna Zaynab, as if she remembers that incident and that point when Al-Hussein alayhi salam took Abdullah al-Radi' to quench his thirst, but brought him back slain with the arrow of Harmala. That is a scene that did not depart the mind of Sayyidatuna Zaynab. Another scene that comes to her mind as she's approaching death is when her beloved brother Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas fell from his horse on his face on the plains of Karbala with his two hands amputated, while Hussein rushing towards Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. These are memories that cannot be forgotten. Another one is remembering Ali al-Akbar when he was brought to the tent of the Shahadat, torn in pieces, and how the face of Hussein was sad and how he was broken, and many other scenes. She remembers how her child, her son, Aoun or Muhammad, was martyred in Karbala, how the rest of the Hashimites and the Ansar were killed in Karbala. All these memories. But the hardest of memories, my dears, is when she remembered how she departed Karbala without being able to say farewell to her brother Hussein. She left, not voluntarily, she was forced to leave, taken as a captive to the city of Kufa with the rest of the women and children, all the way to Kufa, from there all the way to Sham. And one of the hardest moments that did not depart the mind of Lady Zaynab was the death of Bibi Sakina, Bibi Ruqayya in Sham. She felt that Ruqayya, Sakina, was a trust that she had from Imam Hussein. She had to take care of her. She went all the way to Sham making sure that Ruqayya is well, but unfortunately she could not take her back to Karbala to see the grave of her father. When she went back to Karbala, as if she's standing in front of the grave of Hussein and saying, Ya Hussein, I am sorry. I am here without your daughter. I left her in Sham. All these calamities, all these masa'ib are in the mind of Lady Zaynab as she bids farewell to her loved ones, as she bid farewell to all those around her. It is time for Zaynab to depart this dunya, to go and meet Hussein, to go meet Hassan and her father Amir al-Mu'mineen and her mother Fatima and her grandfather Rasulullah, her children and the rest of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين